In Diablo 2, the Werewolf has always felt like the more favored druid form, not only by the player base, but also by the developers, packing the ability to use 5 shifted skills compared to the bear's 4, and also being a prerequisite for the skill lycanthropy itself. So today we're going to dive into what makes this form so special with the 3 exclusively werewolf skills: Feral Rage, Rabies, and Fury. Starting with probably the most frustrating and hard to explain skill of the batch, we have Rabies, an interesting poison skill which can have a few layers of fun to it, but is more often fighting against itself mechanically rather than being especially useful. This is because, unlike pretty much every other poison skill that works with attacks, Rabies competes with your own poison rather than stacking on it. This means if you stack high poison damage, you will apply the high poison damage to the main target, but the contagion itself will spread your lower Rabies poison damage to the rest of the crowd, so maximizing off-skill poison damage is not usually optimal outside of specific setups that don't mind the overrides. As far as how Rabies spreads, it's actually a multi-part skill. When you hit a target, you apply 2 things: poison and contagion, with the contagion being represented by the orange aura latched onto enemies. And at every 4th frame of game time, or a little under 1/6 of a second, any enemy affected by the contagion will launch an invisible missile to infect nearby enemies. When infected, the new enemies will gain a contagion that has a duration equal to the amount of time left on the source monster, and will get poisoned by Rabies as well. This goes on until the duration of the skill expires and is pretty good for softening crowds. This reapplication of poison can do something that no other poison skill can do though, and that is, it can kill a player. This is because it's consistently reapplying the poison if the missile happens to pass through the host body. So unlike normal poison, which continually ticks away at life until it's low, Rabies will put a new poison on top of that 1 life player and deal its first tick of damage, which ignores the poison survival function. Though considering you have to hit the player first, it's not quite as valuable as you would think for PvP sadly, but it is there. Into the more commonly useful skills, but one that requires half the time to explain, we have Feral Rage, one of the key tools to the werewolf sustainability. It packs boosted attack rating so you can charge it up easier, and a bit of extra damage to make charging it up a bit less of an annoyance. Though the reason why it's such a key tool is that it provides a double whammy of movement speed and life leech that grows as you gain additional charges. And yes, it can be charged well beyond 4 charges despite the graphics stopping there. Though the best way to treat it is getting just enough levels in it to get the max life leech where you want it, and then move on to the other skills. The real handy thing about Feral Rage though is that as long as you have the charge orb around you, the benefits to speed and life leech will apply to all of your attacks. So the common practice is to charge this up to higher levels, and then use Fury in between, just dipping back to this skill every now and then to keep the charges refreshed and working, providing 4% life leech per charge and a reasonable boost to run walk speed, though with diminishing returns as most run walk boosts do. Lastly, in the werewolf exclusive skills, we have Fury, which was an okay skill before, giving the druid an almost zeal-like attack with solid attack rating and damage boosts. But it was further improved in 2.4 by giving it a boosted bonus to attack rating, as well as a reduction in the number of frames it has per attack. Though it is taken out of the rollback frames rather than the action frames. So to get the hit will take the same amount of time, it's just the recovery will be shorter. Basically like a less drastic version of the change they made to Fend on the Amazon. As far as the attack cycle on Fury, it follows a pattern of slow start, fast middle, and slow end, which results in it ending up being relatively competitive with Zeal at maximum speeds, which are not terrible to reach thanks to the innate bonus in the werewolf form. And the change to allow for off-weapon attack speed boost to shapeshifted characters is a big boon as well. If you're curious what the new action frames and frames per attack are, there will be a link in the description to the calculator, as well as a backup link to the archived version. Now, if you're curious about the base forms as well though, a link to that video should be on screen now, and stay tuned for the bear coverage very soon after this. And as always, a special thanks to the channel members, patrons, and Twitch subs that make this content possible.